Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we're going to be talking about Andy Stanley's chaplain service that he gave in front of the Georgia legislature. And we're going to be talking about how he preached in front of politicians. Did he deliver the gospel to them, or did he defend their iniquity? And that's what we're going to be diving into today in this video. And we got Andy Stanley up in the Georgia state legislature.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. It's an incredible honor for me today to introduce our chaplain. I first met him at the age of 12 years old when my family started attending the First Baptist Church of Atlanta, where his father, Dr. Charles Stanley, had recently become the pastor. Our friendship grew in a rather strange way over the next few years as I dated his sister.
This Republican's going along with the current thing.
Of my three sisters. But he's been a great friend to me for all of my life. Pastor Andy Stanley. He founded the North Point Community Church in 1995. Today, North Point Ministries consists of 10 churches in the Atlanta area and a network of 180 churches around the globe that collectively serve over 200,000 people weekly. A survey of U.S. pastors identified Andy as one of the 10 most influential pastors in America. He's the author of more than 20 books.
That's unfortunate.
And his success reaches well beyond the Atlanta area, with over 10.5 million of his messages, leadership videos, YouTube videos, and podcasts being accessed each month. 10.5 million. The founder of Apple, Steve Jobs, is famous for saying, "A lot of times people don't know what they want until you show it to them." I've always thought of Andy Stanley as the Steve Jobs of pastors. He figured out how to build a church that people who had never been to church or had had a bad experience in church would want to attend. A lot of people didn't know they wanted to attend church until Andy created the unique model that is North Point Community Church. So it's my honor today to introduce you to Pastor Andy Stanley.
Let's just talk about that introduction for a second. Like, that is such an unfavorable or unbiblical introduction of a pastor. He created a church for people that don't like church. Well, do you know why those people don't like church? Because they're reprobates. Or they're in disobedience. Like, I understand that no church is perfect. I understand that you get hurt with churches sometimes. But there is a command in Scripture to not neglect the assembly of the saints. We are supposed to have some sort of ecclesiastical authority over us. Again, ecclesiastical, not necessarily to be conflated with civil, or not necessarily to be conflated with familial as well, but an ecclesiastical authority, someone that is shepherding over our souls. That is supposed to happen. And it is, to me, it's disobedient for a Christian to willfully try to be a lone ranger. I think that is a moment of disobedience. I get that no church is perfect, and I'm not talking about the people that can't find a faithful church. I'm not talking about those people.
Wes told me y'all weren't allowed to clap in here, so I'll just imagine uproarious clapping after that fabulous introduction. Is that really a rule? That's a rule. All right, that's probably a good rule. We used to have that in church, and then somehow along the way we got over that. Anyway, I know I don't have...
Just a point of order. I am recording this video after I went to a political event where, I was behind the doors with the politicians and the candidates, and, Maryland Republicans, it's not that they are stupid, it's that they don't agree with you. I'll just leave it at that. That is the mood that I'm in. I spent too long amount of time with Maryland candidates in the Republican Party tonight before I'm recording this that I'm a little bit fiery, and that's why I'm doing this video and not a different topic, because tonight's the night to unload.
I only have a few minutes, but Wes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much, and it's so great to meet so many of you who I've known in the past, and it's good to reconnect. I love our state, and you love our state, and I don't want to live anywhere else, and I can't imagine living anywhere else. And I know wasn't invited to give you advice, but I'm going to give you my advice anyway, and I want to say beforehand, I've never done what you've done. I couldn't do what you do, and so I probably don't know what I'm talking about, and you have permission to talk bad about me behind my back, because I really am speaking into a vacuum, because I really don't know daily the pressure that you live with and the responsibility that you have. But I do have some unsolicited...
Are we really going to pretend that a state legislature has such a tough job? Are we really going to pretend that? In most states, it's a part-time job. In many states, they don't even meet every year. Let's not pretend like this is a difficult job. The average person could do it. And the average person is pretty stupid. But, the average politician.
Advice. As you know, organizations and states are never better than their leadership, and that's why you're doing what you're doing. And when leadership is divided, things aren't amazing. And you're here because you want the state of Georgia to be so amazing that the other states in the union look at Georgia and go, my goodness, what in the world have they figured out that the rest of us can't seem to figure out? And the win is for Georgia to be amazing. And Georgia is wonderful, but maybe Georgia could be amazing. When leadership is divided, things aren't amazing. Things never go as good as they could. Disagreement is unavoidable. You've heard this before. Disagreement is unavoidable, but division is always a choice. And the state that figures that out is going to be amazing. Division creates complexity, complexity creates inefficiency, and efficiency creates uncertainty, uncertainty drives people to their what's in it for me corners. Now, unfortunately, in your world, there are advantages to division. You can raise more money when things are divided. You can be sure that politically speaking, somebody clapped at that. You're not supposed to clap in here. That's the only rule they told me. You can raise more money when people are divided, ensure that the other group is out to get them. Politically speaking, fear of the other party is an asset. Division makes it easy to demonize and mischaracterize the other folks. So, unfortunately, where you sit, fear and demonization and disunity is to your advantage. What if we as a state decided we're not going to do that anymore? And you could decide that, because unity is a decision. Disagreement is helpful and healthy, but disunity just makes things harder for everybody. You know that. So this is the negative part, okay? To those of you who pander to and foster division, you are terrible leaders, and let me tell you why. They're going to start clapping again in a minute, I'm afraid. Here's why I say that. If you need an enemy in order to lead, you're a poor leader. The way I say it to pastors all the time is, look, I say, hey, if you want to do something different, swim to the other side of the pool, but don't kick off the wall. If you have to kick off the wall to create enough momentum to get to where you want to go, then you're doing something wrong. What if we as the leaders in this state decide we're not going to kick off the wall anymore, that we don't need an enemy in order to win, and we don't need an enemy in order to lead, because that is extraordinary leadership. But the problem or challenge is where you sit and with what you've been asked to do and what you feel the pressure to do. Have we ever seen it done that way? Have we ever seen somebody do something extraordinary politically in a state or for a country where they didn't kick off the wall and have to leverage off an enemy? What if you just decided, you know what? We're not going to do that anymore. This is something.
Does he understand what politics is? Politics is a steel cage match. It is a game of field position. That's what politics is. Let's not pretend like, especially in partisan politics, but even supposedly non-partisan races like school board or a lot of towns have non-partisan mayors and races like that. Let's not pretend like, there aren't Republicans and Democrats in those situations. Again, I'm active in local politics where I live, and I can tell you, these are a lot of these races that I'm active in are one-party races. Democrats are not competitive here. So what he's saying doesn't apply in large swathes of the country where there's not a competitive seat. Most elections aren't competitive. They're just not. That's why the re-election rate is so high in this country. So what he's saying is largely untrue, that they don't need to leverage to get elected. If anything, good leaders have to leverage to get elected, because that is the only way they can, get elected, is to leverage. This guy sucks. Help me beat him. And that's how politics is supposed to work in this country. Politics is supposed to work that if someone sucks at their job, you hold them accountable at the ballot box. That is how a democratic republic process is supposed to work. You replace representatives that suck. That's how this is supposed to work. Andy Stanley is trying to reinvent the paradigm here of how it's supposed to work and how it functionally does work into something utopian. And that denies human nature, denies what politics actually is. You're talking about hitting home runs in football. That's what Andy Stanley's doing here.
Something I learned from Jesus. I'm a pastor, so I need to talk about Jesus at least once. And here it is.
At least once. At least once.
Jesus says, this is important. Just because somebody considers you their enemy, you do not have to return the favor. Just because somebody considers you their enemy, you do not have to take your cues from your enemies and call them or treat them like an enemy. What if we just did that? So here's my advice, and I'll wrap this up real quick. I want you to resist what psychiatrists refer to as fundamental attribution error. Fundamental attribution error. I'd like for us to all just say that together, because it's maybe the only thing we've learned today. Ready? Fundamental attribution error. Let me tell you what fundamental attribution error is, in case you don't know. Fundamental attribution error is when I ascribe to you and your behavior, character issues. But when I do the same thing, I justify what I'm doing based on the fact that there were circumstantial issues. For example, when I'm late to work, it's because I was helping my wife and being a good husband and a good father, and there was an accident on Georgia 400. When you're late to work, I decide that you're just lazy, you don't care, that you're irresponsible, you're disorganized at home, and you're not really committed to the organization. That's what fundamental attribution is. It is attributing to the other person character issues and motive issues instead of circumstantial issues.
Now, where did that quote from Jesus come from? Maybe it was a paraphrase. And now he's going to talk more about pop psychology than Jesus. I just want to point that out. He is speaking to politicians, but rather than convert these heathens, he's going to talk about pop psychology.
But then when we mess up and we stumble, we immediately excuse, what we've done because, things are busy, there's experiences going on, there's circumstances going on. In your world, it sounds like this: the corrupt Democrats and the racist Republicans. The corrupt Democrats, it's character. All of them are corrupt. The racist Republicans, they're all a bunch of racists. And that's not true. So what if in the state of Georgia, we just stop using that language? I mean, it may never catch on in any other state. It's certainly not going to catch on in Washington, D.C., but what if...
See, we're getting into this utopian I don't want to say idolatry, but this idealism, this utopian idealism that Democrats just aren't simply corrupt. There is nothing good in the Democrat platform. I've read the Democrat platform. There is not a single policy position that's good. And I believe that good is an objective standard. I'm not saying the Republicans are perfect, because here's the paradigm in American politics. This is, he's talking about, Republicans call Democrats corrupt and Democrats call Republicans racist. Here's the actual paradigm. And this is the frustration of many of us, just the American people in general, is that Democrats are evil. They're evil. They're the party of Satan. Republicans are retarded. They don't know how to govern because they don't really agree with the people that helped put them into office in the first place. So they don't live up to their promises, and they don't realize how bad this is for their own party. Like at the Republicans. So here's what I got told tonight. I got told by a solid conservative candidate that I am a terrible politician. And you know why I got told I was a terrible politician? Because I said in a room full of Republican candidates, what has Larry Hogan, the Republican governor of Maryland, what has he done for the Republican Party? And what I mean by that is a game of field position. Is the Republican Party better off after 8 years of Larry Hogan as governor in Maryland? And no. The answer is no. We have made no real gains. The activists are making gains, but Larry Hogan did not make any gains. You look at the state of Florida with Ron DeSantis. In this game of field position, he is scoring touchdowns, he's putting points on the board, and he's moving the state to the right. He is making Florida from a purple state where he won by less than 50,000 votes to a solid red state in this upcoming election, where most people don't even think the governor's race is even competitive, despite how competitive, fiercely so, it was 2018. It was fiercely competitive. So I said that in a room full of Republicans, articulating that Larry Hogan did nothing to help move the ball for the Republican Party in Maryland. Instead, we have the activists. Judicial Watch, I want to give them a shout out for their lawsuit that helped, is in the process of ungerrymandering the districts. And I've seen the latest map that came out, or the latest map that looks like it could get approved by the Maryland state legislature and submitted to the court, because they have a rapid time limit to do this. And we could have multiple districts in play. And that's because the activists did that, not Larry Hogan. He was powerless to do this. So he didn't govern like a conservative. And therefore, we basically have to, grassroots has to take over because the politicians aren't advancing the ball for us. And because the Republicans are stupid. They don't realize that their failure to live up to their promises does not help them politically. It hurts them because bad Republicans lead to worse Democrats. And to just continue with the football analogy, we could be punting the pendulum swing. We're punting the ball, and the Democrats will get the ball now, and they're going to put points on the board. They are hungry for the next Gavin Newsom-style Democrat in Maryland, or Martin O'Malley. So that's what they're hungry for. Bad Republicans lead to worse Democrats. And Andy Stanley's defending the character of Democrats. There is not a single Democrat in Congress that I could affirmatively say is a Christian. There are at least a few on the Republican side that, you know, they're a legitimate Christian in the fight. I think that's a reasonable thing that I could say. But on the Democrat side, you can't say that. You really can't. It is a character issue. And he's trying to say that, you know, worldview isn't a character issue. It is.
If it caught on in the state of Georgia, clearly something's wrong with these people. How can they say that? How can they support her? How can? Thanks to fundamental attribution error, we know the answer to the questions, and it's because, you know, again, the Democrats are godless socialists and the Republicans are ignorant racists, right? Their actions and decisions couldn't possibly have anything to do with how they grew up, where they grew up, who they grew up around, how they were raised, and what they experienced along the way. These people aren't responding to circumstances and experiences. They have character issues. They're corrupt from within. And then, one of your children...
Hold on there. What does Christianity teach? Our base state is that we are all corrupt from within. We have the original sin. The original guilt of Adam is inherited through, and we pass it down. We have it, we pass it down. Jesus did not have it. That's part of the hypostatic union. He did not have the original sin. So he was able to be fully God, fully man. Did not have the original sin. And so he could live a perfect life, guilt-free, and be the second Adam. The second Adam. So Christianity fundamentally teaches in the doctrine of original sin, which people like William Lane Craig deny. And you get a bunch of simps for him in my YouTube comments that say he's not theologically liberal. You're mischaracterizing his stated denial of original sin. But Andy Stanley here is denying original sin, in a sense, because he is saying that we don't have, you know, they don't have an internal corruption issue. It's like, yes, they do. And, you know, I think Republicans have better policy positions for the most part due to grace. I'm not saying, not grace as in salvation, but, you know, natural grace, where they are given, you know, they are not, God does not allow them, you know, total depravity is a real thing, but not everyone's as evil as they could be. So I think that's the case with Republicans a lot of times. Even the good ones that aren't Christian, you know, they're not as evil as they could be, and certainly the stupid ones. But a lot of them are actually worse than the Democrats. There is a corruption issue, and I don't think, like, what Republican's going to tell you there's no corruption in the Republican Party? Who's going to say that? Maybe the PragerU types, but that's a small audience. That's a small audience. So we can't deny Christian doctrine when preaching to comfort the sensibilities of Democrats, as Andy Stanley is clearly doing here.
Children or grandchildren switches parties. It's like, uh-oh. So they're not all racist and they're not all corrupt. Well, of course they're not. So what if we just stopped with all that in the state of Georgia? Be better than that, because you know better than that, and we let our people better than that. And when someone with, and I know this is unrealistic, but we can just dream, can't we? When someone with a microphone starts ginning up the crowd with all that crap, you know, don't clap. Don't say amen. Don't get caught up in it. Don't approve of divide them up and keep them scared leadership. Just walk out. And better than walk out, walk toward the middle, because the middle is where the problems are solved. You know that. The messy middle is where the problems are solved, but to walk toward the messy middle, we all have to get out of our Republican and Democrat bucket and walk toward the middle. And that's not popular. But what if in the state of Georgia, we decided, you know what? We're not going to be political. We're going to be leaders. We're not going to be political. We're not going to be strapped in.
Okay, this is not effective leadership whatsoever, because when you run for office, you run with an agenda. And to walk towards the middle, as he suggests, will likely mean a compromise of said agenda. And therefore, you would violate campaign promises. Now, of course, I think Andy Stanley would probably say you should run on being a moderate, as he promotes. But let's be real about what he's actually saying here, is support the status quo. That's what the middle is. It's the status quo. Being a moderate is being a supporter of the status quo. That's what it means. If you're a centrist, that means you like the status quo. You want things to keep going the way that they're going, at the rate that they're going. That's what that means. You don't want to turn back and conserve the founding values of the country, and you don't want to accelerate as fast as the Democrats are trying to accelerate the decline of the United States of America. You want to stay in the middle. Maybe go in the slow lane, or middle lane, not the left lane, but the middle lane. Republicans will take the slow lane because they're not actually really conserving much effectively on a national level. On a state level, in a state like Florida, we're seeing some points on the board. To switch from a highway analogy to a football analogy. And Andy Stanley is talking about solutions in the middle. What solutions? What let's use Congress as an example. Name one bipartisan bill in Congress from my lifetime that was good. That was good. The 1994 crime bill was before I was born, so that would probably be the last example. But there are no compromises to be had on issues of immigration, where Democrats, their starting position is, we want these people to have the right to vote so that we can demographically terraform our nation. And the Republicans don't really have a coherent position because they have a lot of rhinos. So, but again, this is where the stupidity plays in, that if we give the Democrats an inch on this issue, we could be losing elections because of the stupidity and disagreement. It's not just, I shouldn't, it is that they disagree with you, but they're so short-sighted, so self-centered. So when I say, they're not just stupid, they disagree with you, but they are actually stupid because they're not seeing how to win. They're not playing the game to win. They're playing the game so they can be a celebrity. They're playing the game so they can be a local big shot, even at a local level. Or at a national level, they love the amenities of being in Congress or a senator because it's a job. It is a job, but it's a cushy job at that. So this is the mentality that Andy Stanley is promoting is just terrible. There are no solutions in the middle. There are no good solutions that Republicans and Democrats will agree on. Like, I asked a Senate candidate in my state who kind of said that he wanted to work with the other side where he could work with the other side. And I asked him, what is the one thing what is one thing that's good that you believe that you can work with Democrats on in the United States Senate? And his answer was term limits, which I believe was a bad answer because I don't think that was a realistic answer. I think that was a bad answer. But it was a good question, obviously, but his answer, not so much. Now, I don't think that he meant poorly. I think, he clearly articulates that he thinks the problem in this country is that we have politicians that are too old and they're career politicians, I should say, not too old, but they're career politicians that have corrupt motives. So he's a big fan of term limits, but I disagree with the idea that Democrats would even come to the table on that. No way. Democrats are a hive mind. They're a hive mind. The Kirsten Sinema and the Joe Manchin are the exceptions, not the rule, whereas the Republicans have, we have the opposite problem where we have one Rand Paul and a bunch of losers who don't know how to win at politics because they're in it for themselves. They're not in it for the cause. They're not in it for their voters. They're in it for themselves. And it's such a short-sighted mentality.
Into the Republican Democrat seat, and I understand this. I mean, even as a pastor, believe me, I understand. I'm the pastor of a church in Decatur, and I'm the pastor of a church in Forsyth County. It's like two different countries, right? So I understand what I'm talking about, okay? A quick aside. No, I'm not going to tell you that story. Anyway, I'll come back. No, I'll come back some other time. Maybe, if I get invited. So, back to my notes. I'll wrap this up. Walk toward the middle, the messy middle, where problems are solved and experiences are shared. You know what happens in the middle? In the middle, we go, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I always thought. Oh, I always assumed. That's why problems are solved in the middle. Dr. King, I learned this the first time this dawned on me was when I read Letter from Birmingham Jail, where he talked about, I was going to quote it, but it's such a long quote. He talked about standing in the middle. When you stand in the middle, you get shot at from both sides. But he has a statue on the mall. Just think about that. Jesus understood this, stood in the middle. Everybody wanted Jesus to be a part of their thing. Everybody still wants Jesus to be a part of their thing, right? The temple conspired against him. The empire conspired against him. There is no Roman Empire, and the temple hasn't been in operation since 40 years after Jesus was crucified. So,
Okay, Jesus was not in the middle of the temple in Rome. That position would have belonged to the Sadducees. Let's just be clear about that. So Jesus was on the other extreme. So, you know, if we want to have extremes, just use my left for a second. Your left. Temple, Rome on the far left. Jewish religious organizations. Jesus. And the two on the left conspired or worked out a deal so that they could come after Jesus. It wasn't Jesus wasn't in the middle of the whole of the Romans and the Jews. The Jews were in the middle and mediated with Pilate so that they could crucify Jesus. They were in the middle. So Jesus wasn't in the middle. And as far as Martin Luther King Jr. goes, Martin Luther King Jr., I think we got to kind of get red-pilled on him because, you know, our perception of him is that he was in the middle, but that increasingly changed after the events that we credit him for. Like, we credit him for the belief that, you know, judge not by the color of the skin, but the content of the character, but he didn't carry those beliefs consistently. Towards the end of his life, he was going far more towards, you know, liberation theology and proto-critical race theory. That's where, you know, he would end up. So let's just, I'm trying to do my part to kind of red pill people on him because he's not exactly, the whole of his life is not heroic to conservatives or Christians. But we love Letters from a Birmingham Jail and the I Have a Dream speech. But those two things are not the whole of Martin Luther King Jr.'s beliefs.
So this is the way forward. This is the way you change the world. And this is your opportunity and our opportunity to make the state of Georgia not just great, I love our state, but to make it amazing. Now, I understand, but not as well as you do, it is hard to raise money in the middle. It's hard to get people angry enough to vote in the middle. It's hard to get people to turn out and vote if you've not made them afraid of their enemy in the middle. It's hard to do what you do if you don't play this silly game. And I just wish we would stop with, oh no, we're losing. If you don't support me, if you don't do this, we're going to lose. You realize in the world of politics, the goal is to always appear as if you're losing, but not to actually lose. What a terrible way to lead. What if we just stop with all that? And when we catch each other doing that, we call each other out, and we sit in those silly rallies and those things, and people, you just decide, you know what, even though I'm in your party, even though I'll probably vote for you, I'm not buying it. And I'm not going to respect it by clapping for it. Now, to do this requires a lot of personal maturity and personal security to lead from the middle. It will require you to love our state more than you love your party. Do you love the state of Georgia more than you love your party? If not, maybe you should do something else, right? And aren't we supposed to love it? I know that's why you're here. I know that's why you got into this. Again, division, disagreement, it's always going to be there. But disunity, it's a choice. So you'll know which one you love more, and the people around you will know which one you love more based on your willingness or unwillingness to move out of your partisan corner towards one another in the middle. I love the state of Georgia. You love the state of Georgia. It's great. Let's make it amazing. Heavenly Father.
Actually, let's drive the Democrats out of electability. Let's do that instead. That's how you make America great again, is you get rid of our left wing in politics. Because other countries have succeeded at removing a right wing. Look at Canada. There is not a single right wing party in Canada that operates in the Canadian Parliament. They don't have a right wing party. The Conservative Party is a left wing party. Is a fundamentally left wing party. UK, is there even a right wing party over there? I don't know how right wing UKIP is, but Boris Johnson is certainly a left of center politician on an absolute scale, which is what I'm using. So, and again, when people say that Hitler was right wing, on what political spectrum are his beliefs right wing? Is he just to the right of the communist movement that he was competing with during the Weimar Republic days? So he's to the right of them. That's still a left-wing movement. And in Brazil, their current president is really hated because he didn't come from either of their two left-wing parties, because they have a socialist party and a progressive party. Those are like their two main parties, and he didn't come from any of those. And he won with a popular movement, because not every country has a right-wing party. America's pretty unique in that. And I believe you're starting to see other European countries kind of have a resurgence of the right wing, like Portugal. It's pretty interesting to watch. But the goal is to make the right, or drive out the left wing from American politics. That should be our goal. Drive them out. Govern effectively, because our values, what we want to govern with, is actually good, because it's more, conservatism at its core does come from the Bible. Now, a lot of things get inserted along the way, but from its core, the premises, its belief about human nature being evil, therefore we need to limit power, that is a biblical premise, that human nature is fundamentally evil. That is a premise of conservatism that's not shared by libertarianism, because they believe that government is evil, and they have a very lofty view of human nature. And that is a premise that is not shared by any collectivist ideology. So, Andy Stanley does not understand politics, and he's defending the character of Democrats in favor of a false unity that cannot exist and will only govern poorly, because he does not understand the times. That's all I got to say about that. My name is Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like this kind of content, also subscribe to the channel and check out evangelicaldarkweb.org and sign up for that RSS feed so you can get daily news updates every day. Have a blessed day. Leave a comment below what you think about what I think, and I will catch you on the next one.